Welcome, EcoQuest Challenge volunteers, to this month's Warts and All EcoQuest Challenge. Today, I'm going to be teaching you how to ID invasive swallowwort vines, which are the focal species for the month of August 2021. Before we get on to IDing the plants, these swallowwort vines themselves, let's focus on these guys here. Monarch butterflies, one of the most iconic insects in North America. Their distinctive orange and black wings, as you can see here, are impressive. It's multi-generational, thousands of miles of migrations from Mexico all the way up to our natural areas here in the Northeast. Well, they're legendary. As many of you know, these magnificent animals that you're seeing here are dependent upon milkweed plants, so as its host to complete its life cycle. There's a couple different varieties or species of milkweeds that monarchs can persist on. And again, they're searching for these milkweed hosts throughout their journey up towards the Northeast to lay their eggs on. And their caterpillars, after they hatch, will feed on these milkweeds and utilize the plant's nutrients to help it grow. Interestingly, monarchs have actually evolved to incorporate the special mixture of chemicals and toxins in milkweeds to give it extra protection against predators as well. And this host plant monarch coevolution is so special and dynamic. And again, they're just symbols of a flourishing native habitat that's in balance that we are trying to protect. And I want to point out here is that, these milkweeds are really kind of unique in the sense they have star-shaped flowers that kind of are bloom that will attract these butterflies and again are very special to it. They also have these milky pods with these finest white hairs. This is how it's spreading its seed. And this becomes important when we look at our nemesis, the black or pale swallowwort that you're seeing here, because the question is, what happens when adult monarchs lay its eggs on this plant here that has similar chemical signals and flower appearance to milkweeds, but instead is invasive swallowwort? You can look at it here. You see how it's got that five-petaled star-shaped flower appearance to it? There's actually two different species here. Black swallowwort has the dark purple flowers, and this one over here is pale swallowwort with it like more lighter pink, kind of a peachy color to it, and tends to be narrower petals here. But again, you can see why monarchs might be tricked into laying eggs on here. Look at its pods as well. You see those white hairs on it? Very, very similar to the hairs that will come out of milkweeds. Again, kind of tricking these monarch butterflies into laying its eggs. And the answer to what happens when they lay their eggs on these invasive swallowworts, well, it's not a good one. Monarch butterflies cannot survive and thrive on this mimic of a food source. Essentially, it acts as an egg-laying wasteland, tricking the adults into laying eggs in a plant that it thinks is going to successfully nourish its young. But not only that, invasive black swallowwort, as you can see here, it's a fierce competitor. Aggressive vine that kind of twines around other native plants, including milkweeds, stealing vital nutrients. So it's like a double whammy threat to monarch survival in terms of egg-laying trickery, as well as space and nutrient competition to milkweeds. As you can see here, I mean, this whole field, this whole understory of this forest here, could be milkweed habitat, but in fact is completely taken over by invasive swallowwort. And this is in addition to the habitat destruction that's brought upon by humans and systems that support monarchs. In fact, monarch populations, their overwintering in Mexico have plummeted more than 80% since the mid-1990s. And the continuing spread of this black swallowwort, again, on the East Coast, is not helping matters out at all. So what can we do? Well, one of the best things that we can do as concerned citizens is to help track the spread of black and pale swallowwort in our region's natural areas to basically uphold the integrity of these ecosystems, not only for monarchs, but our native plants as well. So for this month's EcoQuest Challenge, we're going to focus on how to ID and report black swallowwort in particular, which is the more common species that we find in our area in the lower Hudson Prism region and northern New Jersey. Next is a field ID portion to help you out and hopefully become part of our challenge. Here's a look at that milkweed imposter called black swallowwort. And you can see it is a vine that is just crawling all over this understory here that's roadside. And there's a couple of different distinguishing features that we can look at to make sure that we are looking at black swallowwort. So right here is the best example of that.
you can see the leaves of black swallowwort. You see how they're coming out opposite of one another here? And again, it's almost like I can't even show you because it's just so twisty and turny. It's a very dark, glossy green leaf. You see how it comes to a point? The edges are smooth. You can see that there's some like some hairs and stuff on the edge, but the edges or margins of this are smooth, and it kind of has like an extended heart shape to it, right? So that it comes to a point here, and the leaves are coming out opposite of one another. But what I really wanted to key in on are its seed pods. You see it here? It almost looks like those green beans you want to fry up in a saute pan or something. Very extended, a couple of inches long, kind of coming to a point. And this is where it contains its seeds. And those seed pods kind of resemble a milkweed pod. So if I open this up and I'm able to crack it open, you'll see that the pods, you see how it's kind of giving out that little saliva there. And if I open it up, if I can get my thumbnail into it, you can see on the inside, you can see that these seeds, they got like finish white hairs on them that would fly away. And then of course, going to, populate the regions near it and continue to spread. So that's what this inside of those seed pods look like, those finish white hairs. But it's really these like extended, glossy, dark green leaves that you're looking for here. Now, interestingly, this blooms in the springtime, and you can see the flower, though. There's just a few remaining of those star-shaped flowers. And if you've ever seen milkweed flowers, they really resemble this, and you can see why monarchs get tricked into laying here, not only the seed pods, but also the flower shapes. It's 5 petals here. I know that I'm looking at black swallowwort here because of its dark purple flowers. Now, if I were looking at a less common type of swallowwort that's just as notorious and also has the same toxicity levels as this black swallowwort here, there is pale swallowwort, though it's less common in our region. And in that case, it would be 5-petaled and more of a light pinkish flower. And that's how you can tell the two invasive swallowworts, black and pale swallowwort, apart, just simply by their flower color. You might see these star-shaped petals still on swallowwort, and you can see that it's like tangled around this grass that I'm holding up here. Again, it tends to corkscrew over things, so yeah, I mean, it can grow up and vertically, but it tends to clamber sideways and horizontally as it looks at, if you look at this area here, it's just severely outcompetes, kind of strangles out our native vegetation. You can find it in roadsides like this, meadows, also climbing up fences and stuff. But this is what we are on the lookout for, and we hope you can post onto iNaturalist. I didn't want to end this video before first showing you what common milkweed looks like. So this is what the monarchs are relying upon here. You can see this stand here of common milkweed. It's growing taller than I am. I'm 5'9", it's taller than me. Oftentimes I can also find common milkweed kind of growing up to my knee height as well. It doesn't have to be this tall, but you can see just the difference. So you see how I'm holding in my hand? That's that black swallowwort here. And if I hold that up next to the milkweed, you can really see the differences between it. So first of all, let's take a look at those seed pods. Remember that sort of like the very skinny, kind of green beany look to this this black swallowwort that I'm holding in the foreground here. And then now here's a look at the seed pods of common milkweed. You can see that they're much, much bigger and thicker. So if I'm holding these two things next to each other, there's really no difference. You can see the big bumps on the common milkweed as well. If you open this up, you can see the seeds of the common milkweed in there. They tend to be just, again, they kind of have those whitish hairs that'll fly away. You can see the seeds in the foreground. And if I open this up even more, you can see these whitish hairs that will eventually take flight and hopefully lead to new common milkweed. But you can see the differences between it. The big bumps, much thicker, versus the green bean-like shape to the seed pods of black swallowwort. And there's also just no comparison between the leaves. Milkweed tends to be much broader, across the width of it, versus the swallowwort, which I'm holding in the foreground here, really comes to a very tight point, tends to be narrower, and kind of has that more extended heart shape look to it, coming out opposite of one another. And again, milkweed, as you probably know how it gets its name, if you kind of see how this got beat up a little bit here, and that milk is sort of leaking out of it, that milky substance that's coming out of the milkweed. So that's just a way to tell the difference between, the milkweed imposter, black swallowwort, and actual common milkweed, which our monarchs rely upon.
Now that you know how to ID these swallowarts, let's talk about how to report them. Well, iNaturalist posting instructions. You're going to post all the observations of suspected swallowwort, whether pale or black swallowwort, under its genus names or Vincetoxicum. You can see that how it's spelled here. Now, of course, if you can see the flower color, you can post more specifically as black or pale swallowwort. And more than likely, it's probably going to be black swallowwort, but without the flowers to kind of guide you, remember that they bloom in spring. So if you can't see it, let's just post under the genus of Vincetoxicum. And that way, it'll again be funneled into our EcoQuest challenge. We'll be able to view it. And that will be very, very helpful to just tracking invasive swallowworts in general. So, of course, if you have any questions, email us at invasives@nynjtc.org or visit our Lower Hudson Prism EcoQuest website. You can see the link there. And once again, want to thank you to all of our partners for making this happen. And thank you for volunteering for this month's Warts and All EcoQuest Challenge. Hope to see you out there.